Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and boys and girls. This is Kieran, and this is my channel. Welcome to the Abyss. Now, this is now episode 4, and it's about Ireland, the Breton laws, the lost tribes, the Phoenicians and Scythians. So, first and foremost, I'd like to say apologies for being so late with this video. Unfortunately, life is what happens when you're busy making other plans, and I'm only doing this as a passion. I love history and I want to share the knowledge, but unfortunately, I've got to work as well. So, hopefully, my next couple of videos won't be so few and far between, and we shall get cracking. But just to give a quick recap of what we're talking about. So, my story here is I'm using Irish myth, genealogies, and relics and monuments and so on and so forth to show a different perspective of history. So, in regards to Irish myth, you have the migrations. So, you had Caesar from the west of Noah's Loch, the Fomorians from the underworld, who are in essence the Titans from the Greek mythologies. You've Partholon from Greece of Noah's Law, and Nemeth from Scythia, modern day western steppes of Noah's Law. So, Partholon and Nemeth, we're going to be doing a bit of a spiel on them later on. And then you have the Furbo, descended from Nemeth, returned from Greece of Noah's Law. You've the Tuatha De Danann, descended from Nemeth, from north of the world of Noah's Law, and the Milesians from Scythia via Spain or of Noah's Law. So again, I want you to remember Scythia. Scythia is very important. Okay, and then obviously of Noah's Law because this is genealogies. This is coming from the Bible as well as mythologies right across Europe. So anyway, we're gonna carry on here. So in different cultures, we're going to use the Zoroastrian faith and the Jewish faith. So in the Jewish faith and the Iranian the Zoroastrian faith, you had the priest class, okay, and just in those two cultures, the Celtic cultures or Irish culture rather has something similar. So again, similarities across cultures, okay? So in our case here, we've got the Druids, the Bards, and the Bretons. And I'm going to focus particularly on the Bretons now in a wee minute. So a Druid was a member of the high-ranking priesthood class in the ancient Celtic cultures. Druids were religious leaders as well as legal authorities, adjudicators, law keepers, medical professionals, and political advisors. Bard is a professional storyteller, verse maker, music composer, oral historian, and genealogist, which again is a lot of where I source my information from all these old bards and genealogists, blah blah blah. So any employed by a patron such as a monarch or chieftain to commemorate one or more of the patron's ancestors and to praise the patron's own activities. So the Bretons are important because they are known as the judges. So the judges, the serpent symbol, and the Israelites. So the people who left Israel were the judged essentially, and when they were cast out into the wilderness, they had an idol, and it was a bronze serpent that they worshipped. So this is interesting in the case of the tribe of Dan and Ireland. So in Breton law, it's the Ireland's indigenous system of law, and it dates from the Iron Age. It developed from the customs which have been passed on orally from one generation to the next. Breton law was administered by the Bretons. They were similar to judges, and though their role was closer to that of arbitrators, their task was to preserve and interpret the law. So these lads went around and pretty much issued judgments on the people of Ireland based off these old laws. And I know I said previously about surnames in Ireland, but if anyone has the surname Judge in Ireland or McInbrethnov, you are possibly a descendant of one of these judges. You are part of the story as well. As I says, I've reiterated this. If you go and look at the Milesian genealogies, anyone in Ireland can pretty much connect to these stories, or of anyone who has an Irish surname, be it an O or a Mac or whatever floats your boat. So to give a quick synopsis of what I missed in the last video, so Dan judges servants and the tribes. So there's a big story in the Bible about the lost tribes. So you've the Israelites who got cast out into the wilderness, and then the Jews who became into servitude. So nobody knows where the Dan tribe of Dan went. But as you can see, you have you have the serpent here, you have Dan, you also have Zara Judah, you've David. So I made some connections to the O'Neill and the O'Briens via family crests. We also have the Harp of David, which is on the harp is a symbol of who? It's a symbol of Ireland. The unicorn is also a symbol of Scotland, and the bull is also famous for worship. You've other symbols here, but I'm only going to particularly focus on the serpent. So, why is the serpent important? So, nobody knows where the tribe of Dan went, and then this is where the story is. They reckon that they came to Ireland and they became the judges. So, they were the judged after the judgment, which is quite interesting in itself. So, the symbol of the tribe of Dan is a serpent. And what did Saint Patrick do in Ireland? So the pre-Christian faith was the pagan law or the Breton law, and you had these people related to the serpent. So Saint Patrick drove the serpents out, but where did what serpents? There's never you wouldn't Ireland doesn't have a climate for serpents. So the what the reckoning is that the serpents is the old faith. So to me, the old faith is the serpent faith, and this goes right across the world. This is in the Americas, and it goes right across to Europe as well. Which is quite interesting in itself. So it's quite interesting that Saint Patrick drove the serpents out. So the Christian story took over from the Irish mythological saga. But if you look like I've been looking into the stories, you will see that a lot of the Christian narrative is based off the old pagans, and it's like with modern religions today, be it Christianity, Judaism, or Islam. Where do they base their faiths? They base their faiths off an older faith, and one of those older faiths would be Zoroastrianism. So Zoroastrianism is an Indo-Aryan or Indo-Iranian faith about fire worship. So we will get into that, but just remember there's constant similarities across all these different cultures, correct? So hopefully that spiel is going to give it, but as I said, you got the red hand of Ulster there, you got the lion of Judah, and you got the serpent, the tribe of Dan. And what's interesting is the white horse here, which is famine from the judgment of the end times in the Bible. So on to the next here. So it's just again a reminder of the symbology. So in Ireland, the O'Neills, you've got the red hand, the fish, two lions, and the royal lineage here, the royal crown. And then the three stars, I reckon, is the Trinity, or could possibly be some relation to Orion's belt. You've got Saint David with his lyre and our harp. And what is the symbol of Ireland? It is none other than the harp. And then in relation to the flag of Northern Ireland, you've got the Star of David, the Red Hand of Ulster, and you have the Royal Crown here. And then you have the Star of David. So as I've previously stated, this all relates back to bloodlines. Like we're all related to each other in the grand scheme of things. And as I said, I've went into that in detail in the Mazine genealogies and modern genetics that I used on myself, essentially. But as I said previously, we can all do it. And then you have the royal seal here, loyal, lion, unicorn, harp, three lions, so on and so forth. So to carry on, you have the myths, migrations, genealogies, and genetics. So in this figure here, if you recall, the R DNA is my father's side and the H DNA is my mother's. So O'Neill on my mum's side, O'Brien or McMahon on my father's side. So these, if you go to the genealogical history of the Mazine families of Ireland, you will see many Macs and O's. You can just connect yourself to the story, just like I have. I used the Lower Gabala Ireland as a source. I've also used parts of the Bible, so obviously Noah and his ark and his three sons who repopulated the world after the flood. And then you have the story of Jesus Christ, David, the 12 tribes of Israel, Jacob, Isaac, Abraham. So, as I said previously, in regards to the different faiths, you have the Jewish faith, the Christianity, and then you have Islam. They are all of the Abrahamic faiths, but they obviously all stem from something else previous, be it Buddhism or Zoroastrianism. So to carry on, part of the reason I really got into this is because of this book here, the Chronicles of Eri. So I always had a huge interest in myths and ancient cultures, be it particularly from Greece and Rome, from when I was a chiseler, you know. And obviously, we used to we had books and stories, and the mum and dad used to read it to us, the likes of Cullen and stuff. And this is where a lot of my love for all this history comes from. But a number of years ago, I came across a book known as the Chronicles of Eri, and it says there it's the history of the Gael, Scyth, and the Iber. So you obviously had the Gaul, but in relation to Scyth and Iber, so Iberians, right, and then Scythians, yeah. But a lot of people don't realise that Ireland's name is Hibernia, and that's obviously comes from the Romans or Latin. But Ireland's actual name is Scota or Scotia. So Scotland's name in Irish is actually Alba. Ireland's actual name is Scota, and the mainland Britain's actual name is Albion. Okay, so there is other names for Ireland. In one is Era or Ere. There is Eru, Fola, and Bamba are the three other names. So there's Scolta, then you have Eru, Fola, Bamba, and these are all the mythological names of Ireland back in the day. So as I said, we've already identified there's been numerous invasions or takings of Ireland. But in relation to this story here now, we have the Chronicles of Eri. So the literal translation into the Lingus language from the Phoenician dialect of the Scythian language of the ancient manuscripts, which have fortunately for the world been preserved through many ages, chances, and vestiges. Volume 1, the first volume, is presented as a translation of a text written by Aeolus, who was the chief of the Gaelic from 1368 to 1335 BC, which is said to be 50 years after Moses. This describes the origin and migrations of the Gaels. According to this text, the Gaels originated among the Phoenicians and migrated to Scythian and Sidon, where the people were who would become the ancient Britain split off from the group that would have become the Gaels. They eventually migrated to Spain. Volume 2, the second volume, describes the Gaels' conquest of Ireland when the Egyptian king Sesostris invaded Spain. He sought to establish idolatry with the Gaels, resisted in 1006 BC. They sailed from Spain to Ireland and conquered the land. They brought with them anti-Sesostris peoples from Spain. In Ireland, they established a religion based on fire worship, in which the chief deities were Baal, identified with the sun, and Re, which is identified with the moon. So, just to hold back for a second now, Ball's going to be featured in this in a little while. But in my work here, I read this book and I'm very familiar with all the other mythologies based around Ireland. I wouldn't say I'm a total expert now, but I know a little of enough knowledge to be dangerous with it. So just remember from the previous videos, we had a fella called R.A. McAllister, right? So, in a critique of the Chronicles of Eri, of the supposed original Phoenician manuscripts, the only evidence O'Connor ever produced for examination was an 18-inch long scroll purporting to be a facsimile or part of the Great Laws of Eri. Were currently held in the John Rylands Library. Scholars who have examined the manuscript are unable to find any likeness of any known language. The rest O'Connor claimed to be lost or destroyed in various circumstances. R.A. McAllister dismissed the book as an amalgam of bombastic paraphrases of Irish analytic matter, irrelevant of parodies of biblical excerpts, etymologies which are said to be seen to be believed, and widely irresponsible inventions resembling those in the closely analogous Book of Mormon. And Alfred Reb in his Compendium of Irish Biography, which is less charitable, deeming the Chronicles of Eri a piece of gross literary forgery. Now again, Mr. McAllister there, he was the official translator of some of these stories, and he basically said all our stories are rubbish. So I made a decision. I says, nah, I says there's something to this. So as I said, I've quite an interest in history right across the world here, and this is where I've based my work on. So instead, I got my DNA and they used family tree DNA and that migration path specifically to prove a point. So as I said, you see my genealogies, or you see my genetic story up through Egypt via Spain. That's my ma's side, and then the other side is from Scythia, and it heads westwards into Ireland. Yeah. So remember what I said previously about the judges, okay? So the role of Fadement. So I actually in my the little hamster in my head started turning, right? And I says to myself, so hold on a second. I can prove this by genealogies. So it says, what about this scroll? So Fadement Rectamar, the lawful legitimate or the passionate furious are rected the judge lawgiver, son of Tudal Tekmar, was according to medieval Irish legend and historical tradition a High King of Ireland. His mother was Barney, a daughter of Skull. He took power after Kin's predecessor and his father's mom Rika. The chronology of Geoffrey Keaton's Forest Fairs and the Ireland dates his reign from 104 to 113. That's after death. The ages of the four masses to 110 to 119. The Argobala Aaron synchronizes his reign with that of the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius. So, as I said, I actually went and sourced this scroll, believe it or not. And it is in the Brehons library, and I'm not too sure you can see it, but this is the scroll here. So I went and I've tried to get it identified, and I cannot, for the love nor money, get this scroll translated. Now, this is important because if you have a fella, now as I said, you connect this to the tribes of Israel or whatever, right? This is the laws that were written down, right? So, what are the laws? The Torah. The Torah is the laws given to people by God. So, what we have a script here that has never been translated. Now, I did try and get it translated, and it was so called garbled modern Irish and Hebrew, which is interesting because in the next couple of slides we're going to discuss that. I will leave a link for any of you internet sleuths that maybe try and help me because I have failed miserably trying to get this translated. But regardless, it's an interesting document. Whether it's real or not, why hasn't it been translated or even attempted to be translated? Because I've contacted people and nobody knows about this. Okay, but as I said, role of Fadement. Fadement was the lawgiver, so he is obviously one of the judges from this migration, from possibly from the lost tribes of Israel. So we shall carry on. This is another image of the scroll. Okay, so as previously stated, so this is talking about the Phoenicians, right? So the Phoenicians, they were essentially flattened by the Romans and the Greeks, and they were wiped from history. So, as I said, we've got some interesting if the Phoenicians were never here, what's this? This is the Phoenician menorah in Ireland. So this page, oh, you've actually seen this. I was actually at the church. This is an old church. This stone is actually buried into the. It's actually been put into the wall. And as I said, it's actually a menorah. So what is a menorah? It's like a Hebrew symbol of the seven candles. But like, what's this doing in Ireland? Like, you can argue the Christian connection, but what if it's something older? What if it's something that's essentially, well, it is a mystery. And my thinking is, so what's it doing here? You know what I mean? But I just wanted to show this to people because there is obviously we've got this connection to Spain, we've got genetics, we've got genealogies. Like there's obviously a story that's being unfolded here. But unfortunately, there's a lot of story with the Phoenicians that's being wiped out as we see in the next slides. So the Phoenicians, Phoenicia was an ancient Semitic Thraco-Lastratic civilization originating in the coastal strip of the Levant region of the eastern Mediterranean, primarily located in modern Lebanon. The territory of the Phoenicians expanded and contracted throughout history, with the core of their culture stretching from Arwad in modern Syria to Mount Carmel in modern Israel, covering the entire coast of modern Lebanon. Beyond their homeland, the Phoenicians extended through trade and colonization throughout the Mediterranean, from the Cyprus to the Iberian Peninsula. The Phoenicians directly succeeded in the Bronze Age Canaanites continued their cultural traditions following the decline of most major cultures in the late Bronze Age collapse and into the Iron Age without interruption. It is believed that they self-identified as Canaanites and referred to the land as Canaan, indicating a prosperous cultural and geological association. The Phoenicians, known for their prowess in trade, seafaring, and navigation, dominated commerce across classical antiquity and developed an expansive maritime trade network lasting over a millennium. This network facilitated cultural exchanges among major cradles of civilization like Greece, Egypt, and Mesopotamia. The Phoenicians established colonies and trading posts across the Mediterranean. Carthage and settlement in northwest Africa became a major civilization in its own right in the 7th century. The Phoenicians were long considered a lost civilization due to the lack of indigenous written records, and only since the mid-20th century have historians and archaeologists been able to reveal a complex and influential civilization. The best-known legacy is the world's oldest verified alphabet, whose origin was connected to that of the Hebrew script via Proto-Semitic script, and which was transmitted across the Mediterranean and used to develop Arabic script and Greek alphabet, and in turn the Latin and Cyrillic alphabets. The Phoenicians are also credited with the innovations in shipbuilding, navigation, industry, agriculture, and government. The international trade network is believed to have fostered the economic, political, and cultural foundations of classical Western civilization. So this is interesting, right? You have a Phoenician people, now Phenoi think Fenians, Nefenia. Now this is all in Irish myth, Nefenia, yeah, Fianna Fáil. Um, they, they had this wide trade network and they were very, very good seafarers. Now, this again is so important. If these fellas were all across North Africa and they were up a coast, they got as far as Iberia, who's to say they weren't in Ireland? I reckon that they were. I reckon the Irish people are descendants of the Phoenicians. Yeah, and as you can see by the migration maps, you definitely could argue that point. Because if Nell went to Scotia, or Nell went to Egypt, he met Scotia, he used to say she wasn't a Phoenician, she was an Egyptian. So there's obviously there's a story there, and I hope people are beginning to see it and what the story is. So the big cultures back in the day were Rome, Greece, and the Phoenicians. But in the little kind of spiel here, so what happened to them? So there were three Punic Wars. The third Punic War or Phoenician. This conflict was fought entirely in Carthage. Carthage is Tunisia, in what is now Tunisia, and centered the siege of Carthage. In 146 BC, the Romans stormed the city of Carthage, sacked it, slaughtered and enslaved most of its population, and completely demolished the city. The Carthaginian territories were taken over as Roman province of Africa. The ruins of the city lie east of modern Tunis in the North African coast. The Romans had such a hatred for them, they were essentially wiped from history. As always, history is written by the winners. So if you do some research into the Punic Wars, there was a dude called Hannibal Barca. He's a cool dude now. He stuck it up to the Romans and he nearly beat them. But the Romans, with the mad industrial war effort that they were, these animals that they were, they just pile drive them, just annihilate them. So this is in part why there's no written record of them, because they've been annihilated. But to go forward, and one of my own kind of theories is, that if the Romans and essentially Roman Catholicism has spread through Europe, and the Phoenicians and the Scythians were connected, is it any wonder that the Scythians and the Phoenicians have essentially been wiped out from history? There's a bit of food for thought there. But again, this is something we're going to talk, because I need to get through these slides again. So you have the Scythians. The Scythians, as Scyths, are sometimes also referred to as the Pontic Scythians, who are an ancient Eastern Iranian equestrian nomadic people who had migrated during the 9th to 8th century BC from Central Asia to the Pontic steppe in modern day Ukraine and southern Russia, where they remained established in the 7th century BC into the 3rd century BC. After being expelled from West Asia by the Medes, the Scythians retreated back into the Pontic steppe and were gradually conquered by the Sarmatians. In the late 2nd century BC, the capital of the largely Hellenized Scythians at Scythian necropolis of Crimea was captured by the Machades the Sixth, and their territories incorporated into the Bosporan Kingdom. The Scythians played an important part in the Silk Road, a vast trade network connecting Greece, Persia, India, and China, perhaps contributing to the prosperity of those civilizations. Settled metal workers made portable decorative objects of the Scythians form a history of the Scythian metalworking. These objects survive mainly in metal form, a distinctive Scythian art. And just remember, the Scythians, as well as the Phoenicians, were very good, had a robust trade network. So the Silk Road runs right across Persia. They're actually trying to replicate something similar to that today in the modern world. So the Scythian colonists, now this is from a reference from a book that's available online. I will link this as well if anyone wants to gander at it. So the Scythian colonists' testimony of Josephus, Magog and his colony. So Magog from the Bible, remember him? So statements of Rhiannon confirmed that by a Jewish runner by Herodotus. Nennius relates that is told by the most learned of the Scotai. Remember, Ireland is Scota. Phoenician circumnavigation of Africa, Phoenician colonization of Spain, Iberius and Homerius, traditions of Partholon, remember him? And early geographical accounts of Ireland and early social accounts of Ireland. So the writer of the article in Ireland in Recyclopedia says it does not appear improbable, much less absurd, to suppose that the Phoenicians might have colonised Ireland at an early period and introduced their laws, customs, and knowledge with a comparatively high state of civilization, and that there might have been gradually lost amidst the disturbances of the country, and at last completely destroyed by the eruptions of the Osman. Uh, of the assertion, which is now scarcely doubted, there is an abundance of proof that it is remarkable that Joseph attributes to the Phoenicians a special care in preserving their annals above that of other civilizations, and that this feeling has existed and still exists more vividly in the Celtic race than in any other European people. Of this assertion, which is now scarcely doubted, there is an abundant proof that it is remarkable that Joseph attributes to Phoenicians a special care in preserving the annals of the other civilized nations. The Irish annals claim descent from the Scythians, who they say are descended from Magog, the son of Japhet, and the son of Noah. So we will sit down here, the Panson of the, according to the book, which is called the Kin of Drumshnata. It was review remembered how curiously O'Curry verified Keaton's statement as the authorship of this work, so that his testimony may be received with respect. In the scriptures genealogy, the sons of Magog are not enumerated, but a historian who cannot be suspected of any design assistance to health built up a was happily supplied by difficulty. Magog led out economy from him were named the Magog, but by the Greeks called Scythians. But Keaton specifies the precise title from which the Irish Celts descended. He says that they established themselves in remote ages to the border of the Red Sea as the town of Shirat, and they were expanded by the grandson of that. So, in regards to languages, right? So, I spoke about Phineas Farsad before. So, Phineas is the king of Scythia. So, just to give you a bit of a ring. So, Phineas Farsad, also Phoenicia. Remember Phoenicians, Phineas. He's mentioned in the Bible as well, folks. So, he's a legendary king of Scythia who appears in different versions of Irish mythology. He was the son of Baal, the son of Magog. Other sources describe his lineage from the line of Gomer. According to some traditions, he invented the own alphabet and the Gaelic language. Now, according to the recession of M&A in the lower Gael Éireann, Phineas and his son now journeyed to the Tower of Babel. In recession, it was Riffet Scott, son of Gomer, said, now he was trained in many languages, married Scota, the daughter of the Pharaoh Kingrus of Egypt, producing their son Gaelic glass. So in the Lower Gael Éireann, he is said to have been one of the 72 chieftains who built Nimrod's Tower of Babel, but travelled to the Scythia after the tower collapsed. According to the Archbishop Ayrton, Phineas journeyed from Scythia together with Gael MacEthar, Eir MacNella, and a retinue of 72 scholars. They came to the plain of Shinar to study the confused languages at Nimrod's Tower. Finding that the speakers had already dispersed, Phineas sent his scholars to study them, staying at the tower coordinated the effort. After 10 years, the investigations were complete, and Phineas created the Beirla Tobad, the selected language, taking the best of each of the confused tongues, which he called Gaelic after Gael MacEthar. He also created extensions called Beirla Féine, Phineas, Phoenician maybe, after himself, Bala after Eir MacNella, and others, and Bethel is known as a perfected writing system for his languages. Beirla and Ophilia, language of the poets, the secret language of the poets, Nat Beirla, a common language and a dialect of the illiterate majority. It later became All and Middle Irish and eventually Modern Irish. The author said claims that Phineas Farsad discovered four alphabets, the Hebrew, Greek, and Latin ones, and finally the Om, and portrays the Om as the most perfected because it was discovered last. So, a little known fact, right? And this is actually what I actually learned this from ancient architects, that the pyramids the Great Pyramids at one stage was covered in white limestone. Now we'll be doing a video on the pyramids. I love the pyramids, man. But at one stage they were covered in writing, and it was Greek, Hebrew, and two other languages I can't recall, but they were carved on this polished white limestone apparently. But to talk about the languages, so remember, there's the Phoenicians. The Phoenicians were in Ireland and they were in North Africa. Yeah, they were in the Levant. So the languages. So there's a fella called Lang Focus here, and I advise you to check out this video because I can barely speak English, right? So it's best that he describes the similarities between the Celtic languages and the Semitic languages. So why is this important? So in this story, what he describes in this video, he talks about this, and there's a known link between Gaelic and Hebrew. But the common denominator here is Phoenician. So if there's a connection between modern Gaelic and modern Hebrew, and the Phoenicians are connected to both, that would mean that there's a connection between Gaelic, Phoenician, and Hebrew, therefore, because the Phoenician alphabet was known to the Jewish sages of the Second Temple era who called it in the Old Hebrew, Paleo Hebrew script. So, believe it or not, the Phoenicians are the Jews. This is where they stem from. This is their origin. So, if there's a connection between what is now Israel, there's a connection with language to Ireland, and there's a common denominator here. It's the Phoenicians. So you have the Irish, you have the Hebrew, and you have the Phoenicians. But what have I been making the point of? We're all the same people. You know what I mean? It's amazing when you really get into it. But I advise you to watch that video because the other fella is way better explaining that connection than I am. But I personally do know that there is a connection between Irish and Hebrew. I did ask that question before, but as I said, that fella will do a great job of explaining it. But to carry on from the languages connection, there's another interesting figure here, right? And Baal. So remember Baal from the Chronicles of Eri. So Baal figures Ireland to Mongolia. So this fella here is known as a Janus figure, Janus. So he's the many-headed god, or he's a two-headed god in Roman myth. And you have this other fella here, and he's based in Mongolia. Now this is like known as a Baal Bel figure. So Baal, remember Baal, yeah? And then here he's known as Janus, but he looks like a Baal figure, Baal. So is this is a connection? You know what I mean? Like this fella is in Mongolia, and then you have this fella in Ireland. So as far east as far west, you've these figures, and there's numerous types of these figures all across the continent. I just use these as two examples because I'm just watching the clock here and beginning to run out of time. But I'm just going to go on to the next map. So remember I said about the R1B or the R1A DNA, so Scythia, yeah? So that Baal figure is in Ireland, and then you have a Baal figure in Mongolia. Now, there's many in between that. That's particularly up along the Silk Road. But if you look, you have these people here. So this is where it all originates, yeah. So you can argue they came out of the Mount Caucasus, the Caucasians essentially, yeah. So you had a branch of people that went off because obviously they're some sort of sun worship, Baal, right? And you've obviously got the genetics, so your DNA goes east and west, correct? But in the story, I mentioned about Nell and Scolta, yeah. So Nell comes from Scythia, he lands in Egypt, he meets Scolta. Scolta then, and himself, then go up, across Africa, up through Spain, and into Ireland. And then you have another Baal figure there. So obviously, there's something here, there's something to this. Like, there's none of these monuments or myths are not connected. They're just different iterations of the same story. But look, it's something of interest, and again, this is what people should be looking at. There's obviously something to this. As I said, there's DNA proof, there's genealogical proof, there's relics, there's monuments, there's megaliths, you name it, it's kicking around, But just to kind of go, I want to kind of hopscotch forward here a little bit, and just kind of before this video ends, I want to talk about the Indo-Aryans, Orange, Scythia, Partholon, Parthia, Nemeth, Media. Okay, so in the first kind of slide there, we were talking. I mentioned to remember I wanted to talk about Partholon and Nemeth, yeah. So Scythia, where is Scythia? Scythia is there. Look, this is that very region I've been talking about. Yeah, Scythia. It's along this region here. And you have the Parthians, yeah. Partholon is Parthia. And then you have Nemeth and Media. Here we go, look. Persia. There's a connection here. There's a connection as far east as there is west. There's an interesting story, and it's a debate here now. But Ireland, Japan is known as land of the rising sun, correct? Because think about it, sun rises in the east and it sets in the west, yeah? So Ireland is known as the land of the setting sun. It's interesting, isn't it? But like as I said, you've got the connection to Scythia, and then who are these people? You got the Parthians and you got the Nemedians. That's these people. They came from the east into Ireland. There's been migrations back and forth, and they've taken their mythologies and they've taken their relics and they've took their style of building with them. Like there's something that really needs to be looked at here. And I spoke to a girl not too long ago. We were talking about I have an interest in Zoroastrianism, and I was looking at the connections. And I said to her, no, there's 100% connections between Ireland and Iran, because you think Aaron, Eireann, Iran, the lion, the worship, fire worship, Baal. It's all. Hopefully, this is all starting to kind of come together for you people now. But unfortunately, this is coming up in 40 minutes now, and I am gonna just read out the conclusion here. So I haven't watched the previous episodes. Hopefully it has now become quite clear that there is some serious connection between Ireland and the wider continent of Europe. We've shown myth, DNA, genealogies, linguistic, relics, monument connections right across the continent, but not to worry, there's still more to come in regard to our findings as me and Linda, and hopefully will lead to a renewal of interest in history and the true story of all our peoples. So, as always, folks, thank you very kindly, and I shall see you when I see you. Alright, thank you very much. Enjoy.